So you're off on that backpacking adventure and your friend has a heart attack, or at least you think he or she may have. What do you do? Or maybe you're sitting in a restaurant and someone next to you kind of keels over. What do you do? Or maybe you work in that restaurant. We have Dr. Jackie back on Big Blend Radio today to talk about heart attacks, how to recognize them, what to do if someone has one in your presence, especially for travelers and those in the tourism and hospitality industry. Dr. Jacqueline-Eubany is a board-certified cardiologist and electrophysiologist, I love to say that word, and author of the best-selling book, Women and Heart Disease, The Real Story. Of course, you can get it on Amazon, all those great places, but I encourage you to go to our website, womenandheartdiseasebook.com. Dr. Jackie's Cardiovascular Wellness Institute of OC is based in Orange, California, and she has a second office in Irvine, also in Southern California, so go check out cvwellnessinstitute.com. Dr. Jackie has been a Big Blend heart health expert contributor for almost 3 years now with us, and you can check out her articles and interviews in Big Blend Radio and TV magazine and Parks and Travel magazine, because she is a world traveler too, and she likes to dive with sharks. And not just any shark, great whites. So check it out. Go to blendradioandtv.com or nationalparktraveling.com. So Dr. Jackie, so good to have you back on the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's always very exciting to hang out with you ladies.
Well, we're behaving. You can see us, and we're drinking water and behaving because, we are recording this segment after our Champagne Sunday show. Are we behaving well enough to say that we had our 5-ounce limit?
It sounds like it. I see you're drinking water, so that's good.
That's good. Have water. So as travelers, that seems to be really important. And Nancy and I, you sponsored us on this assignment to go and cover 1-hour walks across the country on our Love Your Parks tour. We travel across the country, and we've been doing a lot of that. We have a lot of walks to report, and it seems like when we were traveling, that's all you're doing is walking everywhere. But one thing we realized getting back on the road is we're consuming way more water than we ever thought, especially in higher altitudes. We've been hanging out in northern New Mexico and Colorado. We even drove the highest paved road in America. That was not fun, but it was really super fun. But what altitude affects things. Is that something that we should think of in regards to heart health, is the amount of water we take in and traveling to higher elevations?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always very important to stay well hydrated when you're on these activities, especially being out in the hot sun, walking, taking hikes and those kinds of things. Absolutely. And when you go up to higher altitudes, the oxygen up at that level is lower than the oxygen level in the atmosphere on ground level. So if you have problems with heart or lung, you should really be aware of altitude differences, because that could affect your health when you get up.
So really kind of have more water. Do you need to kind of take it slower as well?
Yes, you absolutely have to, because you're struggling with the lower amounts of oxygen. If your heart's normal and your lungs are normal, you're able to compensate for the decreased amount of oxygen at very high altitudes. But if you have abnormalities in your heart and lung, it's much more difficult for you to compensate at that level. So you should be aware of what heart condition you have, and you should discuss it with your physician before you actually take this trip to see if he or she thinks you're well enough to do this altitude hikes.
Oh, wow, that's a good thing.
It seems a lot of people get headaches from higher elevations. Seems to be the first thing that happens.
Yes, because that's from lack of oxygen. We take oxygen for granted, but as you go up higher in altitude, the oxygen levels up at those heights are much lower than they are down at ground level. And you do have ailments of your heart or your lungs, you're not able to extract enough oxygen that's necessary for your organs to function normally. And so you struggle with all kinds of things, and it can actually be deadly for you. But if you're normal, then your body knows how to compensate. It takes some time to compensate, but it can compensate for the lower levels of oxygen.
It kind of almost has to go into training while you're there. You kind of
Exactly.
I've had friends that have climbed Machu Picchu, and especially women, I've noticed having a harder time. I know one lady, I think I may have talked about this on a show with you before, climbing Machu Picchu, and it was that time of month, and it really and because it was that time of month, she had a even harder time in regards to dehydration.
Absolutely.
And she's like fit, man. I mean, she's like a surfer from hell, man. She can surf every wave. She's done all these things. But here she was, like Miss Fitness, and she really battled getting up to the top of there, but she did it. She really made herself do it. But she said it was like the first few days, and then all of a sudden her body did slowly acclimate. So
Absolutely.
maybe your first few days slow down.
Exactly. And that's why when you hike, especially places like Machu Picchu, you do it slowly and you stop at different altitude levels, giving your body time to adjust to the decrease in oxygen level.
Have you done Machu Picchu?
No.
That would surprise me.
It's on my bucket list though, but I haven't
Oh.
yet. But yes, absolutely. I would like to do that. Hopefully
So,
I can do it before I get too much older, because it's a difficult climb from what I so yeah.
that's the one thing too. I mean, you've dived. So does diving affect your oxygen level to your heart as well?
Well, if you go down too deep, that's why, if you're a diver, if you're open water or what have you, we have levels that you shouldn't go beyond, because you're at high risk for getting into trouble with air bubbles or those kinds of things. But yeah, so you shouldn't go down too deep, because that could be the same issue.
Well, this is interesting when we talk about these kind of extreme hikes, right? Which, we cover in Parks and Travel magazine. A lot of times I think you should be going with a guide, and maybe that guide needs to be experienced medically. Do you think that you should check that out?
Yeah, I mean, at least in basic life support, they should at least be, experienced in that. And I think the onus is up to you to know what your medical conditions are and your limitations are, because this person is really not your physician or a medical specialist, so they don't know the extent of your medical illness. So you need to know, and you need to have a discussion with your physician about what your limitations are before you do these extreme.
Oh, very good. Very good.
That makes sense.
Yeah, when you travel too, there's a lot of, instances. You could be in a hotel, restaurant, there's gazillions. You could be on the highway and you see someone kind of keel over. And I hate to use that word, but it's true. Someone goes down. How do you know? You don't know if it's a stroke, it could be anything, right? An aneurysm.
You could just faint.
Yeah. And what do you do at that point? Obviously call 911. But sometimes that takes too long depending on where you are. Nancy and I, we travel through some remote areas. I mean, you could be going through northern New Mexico, and if you didn't go to the bathroom or get gas, trust me, you're in trouble, because ain't no trees to hide behind.
There's no tree slide. It's like, whoa.
And when you get lost, the gas stations just aren't there. So there's none of that.
Actually, even no signs.
Yeah. So
you're like, you could go like 200 miles and not see a sign.
Exactly.
And then you're like, where are we?
Yeah. But that's something I think about, like, what happens when something happens, maybe someone in the car with you or someone you see, it could be in a restaurant. And it also brings me to the hospitality industry, the tourism industry. Are they trained to recognize these kinds of things, even if they're in a remote area, maybe needing to know, is it CPR? Do you do that immediately? So let's start at the basics, and they'll get into all that of how to recognize a heart attack. Personally, maybe would someone having a heart attack know they're having a heart attack?
Sometimes they do, because usually when you're having a heart attack, it's sometimes it's your second or third, so you know what it feels like.
Oh, wow.
Typically, what patients complain of that are having heart attacks, they complain of this left-sided chest pain or pressure radiating down the arm, and they're sweaty and they're short of breath, but they overall don't look good. And that is a clue that could be a clue that they're having a heart attack. So in that situation, if you find somebody like that, if the person is awake, you can ask them what their medical history is. This is after you call 911 first, because the quicker you can get this person to the hospital, the quicker they get intervened on, and the more likely they are to survive that event. But after calling 911, then you ask the patient, you talk to the patient, see, you're a heart attack patient, you're a patient with heart disease. Do you have any medications on you? Do you have aspirin? You want to give patients aspirin immediately. So these patients with heart attack, they're either carrying their medications with them, and you can find out which one is the aspirin and help them get some aspirin in their mouth, or a medication called nitroglycerin, which is a medication that we give to patients who've had a heart attack that help dilate their blood vessels so they can get oxygen to their heart, preventing what we call tissue death. So you can help them take the medications that they normally take while you're waiting for the ambulance to get there. But
so when someone has a heart attack, they're not completely out. So there's a
not all of them. There's some people that are. There are different levels depending on how large this heart attack is. If it's a small area, then you might be still awake and able to communicate with people. But if it's a very large heart attack, there's one that we call the widowmaker because it's an occlusion to one of the arteries that supplies about 2/3 of the heart. And that artery goes down. If you don't open up that artery, that patient will die.
So I think we're used to television, especially, I'm just going to go Archie Bunker.
No, and Sanford and Son.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
those
that's
are all
it.
fake heart attacks. Those
The
are just
heart attack where the person puts their hand over their heart and they feel this pain, and I'm coming. And
Esther, not Esther, I'm coming.
like,
That's
so
right.
That is not what it's like.
Well, some people will clutch the left side of his chest, and they're extremely uncomfortable, and they're in extremis. You can tell by the look on their face. They're pale, they're diaphoretic, which means they're sweating, and they're just very uncomfortable, and they're telling you, you know, my chest hurts, or the pressure, someone's sitting on my chest, I can't breathe, you know, those kinds of things. They're very uncomfortable with it. It's not like you're telling, not like Sanford, that's an over dramatization of it, but no, and these guys are very uncomfortable.
And what about, is a difference between men and women? We've talked a little bit about that. It's part of also why you wrote Women in Heart Disease, the book, is that women kind of have it's silent. It's like a silent killer. And even when they have a heart attack, it's a silent killer.
Right, absolutely. So women can have different manifestations of heart attack, but we say about 43% of women may not have chest pain when they're experiencing heart attacks.
Wow.
Women can have minimal symptoms like just shortness of breath or GI symptoms, what we call GERD or heartburn type symptoms, which make it difficult to diagnose at times.
So when if you're sitting in a restaurant, or maybe I'm just using that as a scenario, and someone is really, you know, obviously you say 911 first. None of us, we're not diagnosing anything. Let's just, unless there's a doctor in the room, right?
Absolutely.
Or someone who's a medic, just, you don't know. We kind of have to go, we don't know. But communication, I know that sometimes, like they say, okay, I don't know if it's a diabetic thing where it's like stick a cookie in the mouth. There's all these things. And when something happens, as someone who is there, you're experiencing that, you're in a panic mode.
Right.
As you're in a panic mode. You're freaking out, and you go to the first thing you remember. Then and I've been in situations, everyone starts arguing, especially now if you're in a place that it's taking 10 years to get help, and you could be in a place where it takes 10 years, literally. If you're at the top of Machu Picchu, good luck. So like you're saying, go to your physician first. But in that time frame, do you sit people up? Do you lie them down? Or are there things you say, give them the medication, the aspirin? Should hotels and restaurants have aspirin on hand, do you think?
So I'm not sure if it's a California law, but this is something that we try to push. I'm on the board of the American Heart Association, and we're trying to push for restaurants and places to have what we call AEDs, which are defibrillators.
Okay.
For patients who, may have a heart attack and pass out and, have no pulse, so that there's something that you can do while you're waiting for the EMS to arrive. Not all restaurants have it, but I've since learned that most casinos have it.
Oh my gosh, I lost. I won. Oh, help.
Yeah, so the best thing to do when somebody goes down is, lay them on the ground, lay them flat on the ground, and you want to check to see if they're awake. Ask them, hey, how are you doing? Are you awake? And if not responsive, then you want to feel for a pulse. You can try to feel for a carotid pulse, which is one of the big pulses in the neck,
Yeah.
or a femoral pulse, which is in their groin. And if they don't have a pulse, that's when you start CPR. If you know CPR, it is a good time to do it. And then if there's an AED around, then you can bring the AED. So what the AED is you just slap the pads on the patient, and the AED directs you on what to do next.
Oh, wow.
This is life-saving things that you can, implement while you're waiting for EMS to get there. Because if you're having a heart attack, you have to get to the hospital. We say time is tissue. The quicker you get into the hospital, the quicker you get treated or intervened on, or procedures or whatever you need, the more likely you are to survive that.
And can a heart attack lead to a stroke as well, or an aneurysm, and go into more things?
The stroke is a different disease process altogether. It involves the blood vessels of the brain as opposed to the blood vessels of the heart, as you have in a heart attack. So patients with a stroke have slightly different symptoms than patients with a heart attack. We have the algorithm to help people recognize patients who have a stroke, and we call it FAST. Be fast is the algorithm. So F stands for facial droop. So sometimes when you have a stroke, one side of your face might droop lower than the other side. So when you see a patient, you ask them to smile, and there's an asymmetry in their smile. That one part of their face is paralyzed. The A stands for arm numbness. If they complain of one arm being numb versus the other arm, you just have them squeeze your hand. If they can't squeeze it, it means that arm is numb. And the S stands for slurred speech. You just talk to them and see how they respond to you. A lot of times patients don't realize that they're slurring their speech. And you, of course, can hear it and say, oh my goodness, this speech just sounds garbled, or he's just talking nonsense. And then you know that there's a problem there. And then the T stands for time, and you call 911 instantly, because now you recognize that the patient is having a stroke.
So when you talk about tissue, right, this is about saving tissue. So this is an important thing we've never really talked about. So is it means that the oxygen isn't getting to your tissue of your body, and so is it almost dying at that point?
Absolutely. Because when I talk about tissue, like your heart tissue, your heart muscle, the heart muscle requires oxygen and nutrients in order to do the job that it does. It beats, it provides blood to the rest of the organ. But if you have a blockage in the artery that is supplying that heart muscle with the oxygen and nutrients that it needs, that muscle dies. And once that muscle dies, the heart will stop functioning like it normally functions. So a heart attack is when you have a blockage of that artery. And the blockage could either occur as a result of a large blood clot, a thrombus forming in that vessel and occluding that vessel. So you can imagine that vessel just gets blocked acutely, and you don't have any blood flowing through. You don't have any oxygen or nutrients. So that tissue, it's painful, and that's why patients experience pain, and then the tissue just eventually dies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Can that tissue regenerate?
Well, if it's not too long, because you can have injury that can heal if you are able to open up that artery within a certain amount of time. But if it takes too long, that tissue will die, and it will be irreversible. So we say time is tissue. The quicker you can get these patients to the emergency room, the quicker you can open up that vessel, the more likely it is that you haven't reached the point of death for that tissue. You just injured the tissue, and with the reperfusion or reopening of that vessel, you get the blood back there, and the tissue can heal. It's not going to heal overnight, but it will be able to heal because it didn't, quote unquote, die completely.
So that's what you're going to hear, like scar tissue and dead tissue that's causing things later. So if you go, like we talk about, okay, if you know you have heart health issues and heart disease, you know you have your blood pressure pills, your medications, your aspirin that you take every day. Now, what happens if you don't know? Is the possibility of now you're taking a hike, and I want to talk about that because the level of deaths that happen in national parks and on trails is very high. A lot of it is falling in ravines, taking selfies, and that kind of thing. But there are people that
Yeah,
think
really.
they're really healthy and still have a heart attack in some way and didn't realize maybe it was something through DNA and your genetics or whatever it is. But you go off hiking and suddenly, and there's a lot of people, especially in their retired years, their golden age, that think I've been hiking for years, and they just go on the same path and no one knows. Number one, I think we have to remember that anytime you go on a hike, someone should know that you're going there. I don't care if it's a 1 mile, 2 mile. Somehow someone needs to know, even if you post it on Facebook, someone needs to know something about where you're going, because anything can happen, especially if you're alone.
Absolutely.
You could be out there totally innocent. The person walking with you, if there's someone with you totally innocent, you have no idea you have heart disease. Do you think that like almost we should all carry an aspirin in our back pocket or something? Case? I mean, because it can't hurt you to take it if it's something else, right?
No, I completely agree. I think having an aspirin with you is a good idea, but people just have to be aware, if you are someone who doesn't exercise at all, if you lead a completely sedentary lifestyle, you shouldn't just wake up and think you can hike up a mountain.
No.
Okay.
You have to,
I agree.
get into good shape before you do something that very physical. And then there are also people who have what we call other risk factors for heart disease, like obesity, physical inactivity, if you're diabetic, hypertension, have high cholesterol, those kinds of things. If you have several risk factors for heart disease, you should really talk to your physician before you embark on a very strenuous activity like hiking up the high altitudes. Because I mean, it looks simple to you and I, but it's actually extremely strenuous. Even I, who does some physical activity, I wouldn't just go up there and take it lightly. I would probably see my doctor or start exercising and prepping myself for that physical, that level of physical activity.
Well, I can tell you, even just Nancy and I going on our tour, I mean, we do our 1 hour walks, which is great. But then all of a sudden we're off on the road and everything is walking. You're on your feet for 12 to 14 hours a day. It doesn't matter what the elements are. You're carrying gear, you're doing this, you're talking to people, and your body just goes, what the heck are you doing to me, man? Just stop it, stop it. And you just keep pushing forward. And when we stopped here, right now we're in Florence, Colorado, and getting ready to produce our magazine and everything, your body just goes, you're going to stop now. It's like your body knows. Your body knows when there's a bathroom.
Absolutely.
If you have to go, your body goes, I know there's a bathroom over there. You're not ready. You'll find it and you'll do it. It knows when you need to crash, and it's telling you the whole time, do it. And if you ignore it, as soon as you get to that spot, we do have brains in every cell, right?
There was one place we got out of the car, neither one of us could walk.
Oh, that's because we went on
people, because the altitude was so high that as soon as we stepped out of the car, we were like wobbly.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're lucky that I drove that.
Yeah.
You should really be in tune to your body. Your body is telling you a lot. You really should do it. If it tells you that it's had enough, you should just listen to it.
Because that's what I was saying. You don't have to necessarily be on this big backpacking thing. You got to still know just walking a whole bunch. I know on our world travel parties with you, Dr. Jackie, you talk about you're off, in Paris or London, you're doing a ton of walking more than normal.
Absolutely.
And you talk about that. We have to, that's something, it's kind of like a silent thing we don't prep ourselves for.
Exactly.
We go on vacation, but none of us prep ourselves for the amount of walking, or in a different climate, different altitude. We don't prep ourselves.
And different pace. I mean, like on one tour we went on, the young man was walking so much faster that I found myself going, hey, whoa.
I'm going to
wait a minute.
Peel over here. There's a tree.
It's only 68 blocks each square of where we went. And halfway through, I'm like, you know what? Dude, you're going too fast for me. I'm slowing down.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's what you said.
My body was like, what's the hurry? And it was like, first of all, you can't see that much going that fast. And it was, my body was saying, no, you're not walking that fast. You're just not.
And we have to kind of know that. Yes. And say no when we go on these things.
Exactly.
So when people get on an airplane, and they're going to another country, do they need to look at that being a health risk for their heart?
Well, it's usually safe to, to travel internationally. Planes have defibrillators on board.
Okay.
Usually they call for a doctor, and there's always somebody around that can help. But what I advise my cardiac patients to do when they're traveling internationally is, one, again, medications are very important. You should carry your medications on you, carry on. Don't check in any medications.
Yeah.
Them on the plane. I tell patients to, it's good to have a medical bracelet or have in writing your list of medical problems, so that in the event that you're not able to speak or tell people, you could just hand them that sheet of paper so they can look at the list of medications that you're on, and look at the medical conditions you're on, which will help guide them with therapy. Again, you stay well hydrated, and if it's a long trip, you want to get up and walk up and down, to prevent clots in your legs or wherever in your body. What I typically do when I have long trips, I usually take a baby aspirin actually before I get on the plane, just to be on the safe side. But I get up and I walk up and down every few hours, just so that I'm not sedentary and putting myself at high risk.
I can't sit that long, man. My body hates it.
I
know. I gotta go up and shake my tail feathers somewhere, man. It's happening. It's happening. Before we go, there's a couple things. One, you were talking about what you're doing on the board of the Heart Association, in regards to what restaurants having. I want you to go back through that, because I think hotels, restaurants, anybody in the tourism and hospitality industry should know about what you guys are proposing, no matter what state, what they could do to help any of their clientele that are in their restaurant, hotel, attraction, whatever it is. This could be something that, no matter if it's a law or not, you could take control in your hands to help anybody walking through your doors. So if you can say again what they need, because I can't remember, because
Absolutely. We're pushing for these, like you said, the hospitality industry and restaurants, and all, or what have you, to have defibrillators, what we call AEDs, on board. AEDs really save your life. So it's just a defibrillator machine that you just put, in the corner. If anybody goes down for whatever reason, if they're unconscious, unable to speak, and don't have a pulse, you can slap this defibrillator on them, and it kind of guides you on what to do while you're waiting for the emergency service to show up. This can really save lives.
That's awesome.
A lot of casinos have them because their patrons tend to be the elderly who have a lot of heart conditions, so they're very, very much in tune to that, and they have but I don't think it's as prevalent in restaurants or in a lot of other public places.
It should be.
Wow.
It should be.
Especially, like, imagine you get the bonus round and you win big, and you're like, oh,
no. Well, no, but I think about all these attractions, and sometimes you're so far into something, and by the time the paramedics get to you and get to that attraction, they should be like, if it's a fair, that kind of thing,
right? You
could be way off in the deep end somewhere, and same in parks and things like that. So it's all about being prepared for the worst thing.
Exactly.
That's what you promote in your book, Women and Heart Disease, everybody, the real story. But Dr. Jackie, I heard a little birdie told me that you're working on book number 2. Cool.
I am. I'm working on number 2, and it's going to be about the Mediterranean diet, because I found that when I go into the community and give talks, the question I get asked the most is, so what is a heart healthy diet? What can I eat? So I'm coming up with the second book to educate people on food and nutrients and how this can really help you develop a healthy heart. And
that's important when you travel too, because we start to, all I know is I crave salad everywhere I go when we travel. I'm like, I need salad, Yeah. But, so when you do the Mediterranean diet, does that mean we get to eat a lot of olives?
Oh yes, and
awesome.
You can drink red wine as well. 5 ounces though. You're you're allowed some wine. Exactly.
Wine, olives, and feta cheese.
Yes, you can have some cheese. Exactly.
Okay, I'm a little happier now. The Mediterranean diet, I've heard about it, is really good. Dr. Jackie, always a pleasure having you on the show, and thank you for advising not only our travelers but also our hospitality listeners as well, are in tourism and hospitality. And everyone, Dr. Jackie also, like I said, is got us on this Love Your Parks tour story assignment as Nancy and I travel full time on a quest to visit all of America's parks, not just America. You never know when we may hop over to another country. But we're really about documenting parks and also how to take a 1 hour walk. That's it, just to get out. If everybody took a 1 hour walk a day, that would help, wouldn't it, Dr. Jackie?
Absolutely.
A 1 hour walk. It's good for you. It's stress relieving. We found an awesome walk here, and we've done some interesting trails on this trip so far. But the interesting one is here along the Arkansas River. And I see every time we've done it, 2 or 3 times now, wildflowers, there's people rafting down the river because it's raging, and there's exercise thingies, there's people cycling, jogging, walking, all ages. So that's your next one because it's cool. It's really cool. So I know there's so many walks. You can walk down your neighborhood. It's interesting. So everyone, womenandheartdiseasebook.com. I encourage you to go get her book. It's a bestseller. And also, if you're in Orange County or Southern California, you can go visit Dr. Jackie and get some expert advice. Go to cvwellnessinstitute.com. And Dr. Jackie, you like to give people advice right before anything negative happens to their health.
Absolutely. See your first before you take an heavy exertional travel.
Exactly.
Cool.
And of course, you can keep up with all of her interviews and articles. Go to blendradioandtv.com as well as nationalparktraveling.com. But of course, at the end of the day, the most important thing is go to womenandheartdiseasebook.com. Thanks so much, Dr. Jackie.
Thanks, Dr. Jackie.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
So much fun.
Always.